There is a quiet little trap hiding in almost every car decision, and it usually does not sound like a trap. It sounds responsible. It sounds clean. It sounds like, I just want a reliable car and a payment I can handle. And if you are over 40, that sentence probably comes from a real place. You have worked long enough to know that stress is expensive. You do not want surprises. You do not want to be stranded. You do not want an old machine turning a normal Tuesday into a problem. But here's the part most people miss. The real price of a car is almost never the number printed on the window sticker. It hides in depreciation. It hides in interest. It hides in fees. It hides in the difference between what feels affordable this month and what quietly weakens your future. Leasing can feel like breathing room. Owning can feel like control. But both can fool you if you only look at the payment. And that is where the hidden math begins. Because the better question is not, which one is cheaper? The better question is, which one makes my life less fragile? So today we are going to slow this down. Not like a finance lecture, like a conversation at the kitchen table where the numbers finally tell the truth. The first mistake people make with leasing versus owning is that they compare the wrong number. They compare monthly payment to monthly payment. And I understand why. The monthly payment is what knocks on your door every 30 days. It is what shows up in your checking account. It is what you feel. So when a lease says $399 a month and a loan says $685 a month, the lease looks kinder. It looks disciplined. It looks like the adult choice. But a car payment is not the whole cost. It is only the part of the cost that has been sliced thin enough to fit into your life without making too much noise. That is the first hidden math. Affordability is not the same as ownership, and a lower payment is not the same as a lower cost. Think of it this way. Leasing is like renting a nice hotel room. Clean sheets, fresh towels, no roof repairs, no broken water heater. You enjoy the comfort, but when you leave with nothing. Owning is more like buying a house that slowly wears down. It is yours. But yours also means tires, brakes, repairs, insurance, registration, and the slow ache of depreciation. Neither one is automatically foolish. Neither one is automatically wise. The danger is pretending they are the same kind of decision. They are not. Leasing is mostly a decision about access. Owning is mostly a decision about control. And when you confuse access with control, money starts leaking quietly. Let's make this real. Imagine a man in his late 50s. He has a steady income, maybe $6,500 a month after taxes. His mortgage is manageable. His kids are grown or almost grown. He is trying to catch up on retirement because life was expensive for a long time. He walks into a dealership and sees two options. Lease a new SUV for 3 years at $440 a month, or buy it with financing at $720 a month. The lease feels sensible because it saves $271 a month. That is groceries. That is a utility bill. That is room to breathe. But here is the quiet question. What happens at the end of those 3 years? With the lease, he gives the car back, unless he buys it, leases again, or walks away. With owning, after the loan is paid, the payment eventually disappears. That disappearance matters more than people think. A car payment that never ends becomes a kind of financial rent. It may be comfortable rent. It may be predictable rent. It may even be worth it for some people. But it is still rent on transportation. And for someone over 40, the most valuable thing is not always the newest vehicle. Sometimes the most valuable thing is a future month with fewer hands reaching into your account. Nobody at the dealership will frame a payment-free month and hang it on the wall. But when you are 62, 67, 71, the absence of a payment can feel like wealth. Not because it makes you rich overnight, but because it lowers the pressure in the room. Now, this does not mean buying is always better. A bad purchase can be worse than a decent lease. If you buy more car than you need, stretch the loan to 7 or 8 years, roll old debt into the new loan, and tell yourself, at least I own it. You may not really own anything for a long time. You may simply be renting the illusion of ownership from the bank. That is where many people get hurt. They say, I'm building equity. But for the first few years, the car may be losing value faster than the loan is going down. You feel it when the car is worth $28,000 and you still owe $34,000. You feel it when a trade-in becomes a negotiation with a bruise under it. So here is a simple way to look at it. Ask yourself, Am I choosing this car because it fits my life, or because it helps me tolerate a payment I should not have taken on in the first place? That question cuts through a lot of fog. Many people do not choose leasing because leasing is mathematically better. They choose leasing because it allows them to drive a car they could not comfortably buy. And many people do not choose buying because buying is wise. They choose buying because they like the word own, even when the loan terms are working against them. The practical test is not complicated. Before you choose, look past the first month and imagine the full cycle. If you lease, add every payment, the money due at signing, fees, possible mileage charges, disposition fees, and the fact that you may need another vehicle decision in 3 years. If you buy, add the payment, interest, insurance, maintenance, repairs after warranty, and what you expect the car to be worth later. Then ask a more honest question. After 5 or 6 years, which path leaves me with more flexibility? Not more image, not more excitement, flexibility. Because flexibility is what protects you when life changes, and by 40, most people know life changes without asking permission. A parent needs help, a medical bill appears, work slows down, a spouse retires earlier than planned, the roof needs replacing. In moments like that, the best financial decisions are the ones that leave exits open. A car should serve your life. It should not corner your life. So the first layer of the hidden math is this: never compare lease versus own by payment alone. Compare them by the freedom they leave behind. Now let's talk about the word that sounds boring until it starts taking money out of your pocket: depreciation. Most people hear that word and mentally step away. It feels like accounting language. It feels like something for spreadsheets, not real life. But depreciation is not a spreadsheet problem. Depreciation is the quiet way a car gets older financially before it gets older mechanically. You may still smell the new leather. You may still love the way it drives. You may still turn around and look at it in the driveway. But the market has already moved on. The moment a car becomes used, even lightly used, part of its value has already walked out the door. And whether you lease or buy, somebody pays for that loss. The only question is whether you see it clearly. In a lease, depreciation is the main thing you are paying for. You are not really paying for the whole vehicle. You are paying for the part of the vehicle you are expected to use up during the lease term, plus financing charges, taxes, fees, and profit. If a car is worth $50,000 today, and the leasing company expects it to be worth $32,000 after 3 years, that $18,000 difference is the heart of the lease. That is the portion of the car's life you are renting. So when someone says, "I can lease this expensive car for less than it costs to buy," the hidden truth is often this: you are paying for the fastest falling years of that car's value, then handing it back before the slower, more useful years can benefit you. That matters deeply for someone in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, because at this stage, time is no longer an abstract thing. You have lived enough life to know that the first half of something often gets all the attention, but the second half often carries the real value. A car can be similar. The first few years are shiny, but expensive. The later years may be less exciting, but if the car is reliable and paid off, those years can quietly build breathing room. A 5-year-old car with no payment can be one of the most underrated financial tools in an American household. Not because it impresses anyone. It probably does not. But because every month it keeps moving without demanding a payment, it lets money stay in your life. Here is a practical example. Suppose you buy a reliable vehicle and finance it for 5 years. The payment hurts a little. Not dangerously, but enough that you notice it. Then year 6 arrives. The payment is gone. The car is not new anymore. It may need tires. It may need brakes. It may make a small sound you pretend not to hear for 2 weeks. But even if repairs average $150 or $200 a month over time, that is very different from a $600 or $700 payment. That gap can go toward retirement contributions, an emergency fund, helping an adult child without wrecking your own stability, paying down a credit card, or simply letting your checking account stop living with its shoulders up by its ears. Now compare that to leasing every 3 years. You may avoid some repair surprises. You may stay under warranty. You may always have newer safety features and a cleaner interior. For some people, especially those who need reliability for work or health reasons, that predictability has value. But you must be honest about what you are buying. You are buying predictability, not ownership. You are buying convenience, not equity. You are buying the right to use the most expensive slice of the car's life and then start again. That can be fine, but only if your broader financial house is strong enough to support a permanent transportation payment. This is where a small mental test helps. Picture yourself 10 years from now, not the fantasy version, the real version. Maybe you are still working, but you want the option to slow down. Maybe you are retired and watching withdrawals more carefully than you expected. Maybe your health is good, but you have learned not to take that for granted. Now ask, in that version of life, do I want my car strategy to require a payment forever? Some people will say yes because they value low hassle and can afford it easily. Fair enough. But many people, when they sit with the question quietly, realize they do not want a permanent payment. They just got used to having one. There is a difference between affording something and adapting to it. Americans are very good at adapting to payments. We adapt to the mortgage, the car, the phone, the subscriptions, the insurance, the credit card minimum. One payment at a time, life becomes a hallway lined with automatic withdrawals. None of them seems fatal alone, but together, they make a person less free. That is why the car decision matters. For many households, the car payment is one of the biggest recurring obligations after housing. If you can eventually remove it, even for a few years, the effect can be larger than it looks. But owning only works if you actually keep the car. Buying becomes powerful when you drive the vehicle long after the loan ends. If you buy and trade every 3 or 4 years, you may be acting like a leaser with a heavier backpack. You take the larger payment, absorb the depreciation, pay taxes and fees again and again, and never reach the quiet years where ownership pays you back. The math of owning needs patience. Not forever. Not driving a dangerous car into the ground. But long enough for the payment-free years to matter. So when you are comparing lease versus own, do not just ask, what is the payment? Ask, where is the depreciation landing? In a lease, it is measured and packaged for you. In ownership, it hits you up front, then often slows down. The first owner usually takes the hardest punch. That is why buying a lightly used, reliable car can sometimes be the middle path. You let someone else absorb the steepest drop, then you own the slower years. It is not as glamorous. You may not get the exact color, you may not get the newest screen, but you may get something more useful than a perfect screen. You may get a car that fits your life instead of asking your life to fit the car. Here is the practical perception to take with you. Depreciation is not just lost value. It is the price of newness. And newness is seductive because it feels safe, clean, and deserved. Sometimes it is worth paying for. But sometimes, especially after 40, the wiser question is not, do I deserve something nice? Of course you do. The wiser question is, what am I giving up every month to keep proving it? There is another piece of the hidden math that rarely gets discussed honestly, and it has nothing to do with the sticker price. It has to do with how you actually live. A lease contract is written for an average version of you, but your real life may not be average. Your commute changes. Your mother needs more visits. Your daughter moves 2 states away. Your grandkids start having games on weekends. Your job suddenly asks you to drive more. Or maybe you retire and drive less than you expected. The contract does not care. It just sits there, clean and quiet, with mileage limits, wear and tear rules, turn-in conditions, fees, and fine print. And that is where a lease can move from convenient to controlling. Most people look at a lease and think, 12,000 miles a year sounds fine. And maybe it is. But the question is not whether 12,000 miles sounds fine while you are sitting at a dealership desk. The question is whether 12,000 miles fits the way your life might actually unfold. Mileage is not just distance. Mileage is freedom measured in numbers. A spontaneous road trip to see an old friend. A few extra drives to help a parent. A temporary work change. A season where family pulls you in different directions. In ownership, extra miles reduce resale value and add wear, but nobody sends you a bill at the end because you lived your life. In a lease, those miles can become a penalty. Now, some people love leases precisely because of the structure. They like knowing the car will be under warranty. They like knowing they will hand it back before the serious repairs begin. They do not want to think about resale value, private buyers, trade-in games, or whether the transmission will become a problem at 105,000 miles. That is not foolish. Peace has value. At 40, 50, or 60, you may be tired of managing every little thing. Sometimes the appeal of leasing is not the car. It is the promise that one area of life will be simple. But simplicity can be expensive if you do not price it honestly. A lease can make the present feel lighter while making the future more repetitive. Every few years, you are back at the table, back in the negotiation, back with the decision, back comparing trims, terms, residual values, fees, interest factors, insurance costs. Back hearing phrases designed to make a commitment feel smaller than it is. And that rhythm matters, because sometimes what we call convenience is just a smoother way to keep a payment alive. Here is a real-life test. Look at your calendar, not your calculator. How do you actually use a car? Do you drive mostly predictable miles around town? Do you take long trips? Do you carry tools, grandkids, dogs, sports gear, luggage, gardening supplies? Are you careful with interiors, or does your vehicle become a second living room? Do you park in a garage, or under trees, or on a street where doors get dinged? These questions sound ordinary, but they are financial questions. A lease likes controlled use. Ownership tolerates real life better. Not always cheaper, not always cleaner, but more forgiving. And forgiveness is underrated in personal finance. A good financial decision is not only one that looks good when everything goes according to plan, it is one that still works when life gets messy. A lease is clean math when your use is clean. Fixed miles, gentle driving, stable income, no surprise changes, no desire to modify the vehicle, no children spilling things in the backseat, no sudden need to drive across the country. But many American households over 40 do not live clean little spreadsheet lives. They live layered lives, aging parents, second marriages, health appointments, adult children returning home for a season, homes that need repairs, careers that change shape. A car contract should be judged against that kind of life, not against a perfect brochure version. Owning has its own mess, of course. Repairs can come at the worst time. A paid-off car can still drain you if it becomes unreliable. There is no honor in keeping a vehicle that makes you late, anxious, or unsafe. Sometimes people hold on too long because they hate payments, and that can become its own trap. If a car is constantly in the shop, if repair bills are unpredictable, if you are afraid to take it on the highway, then paid off is not the same as protecting me. A car that costs your peace every week is not free. It is just charging you in a different currency. So the practical balance is this. Leasing can protect you from repair uncertainty, but it may expose you to contract rigidity and permanent payments. Owning can protect you from permanent payments, but it may expose you to repair uncertainty and resale risk. Neither one is pure. Both are trade-offs. The mature financial move is not to defend one side like a religion. It is to ask which risk you would rather carry at this stage of life. Do you want the risk of repairs with the possibility of payment-free years? Or do you want the certainty of ongoing payments, with fewer repair surprises? One thing I would be careful with is putting a large down payment on a lease. People do it to lower the monthly payment, and emotionally that makes sense. A smaller payment feels safer. But if the car is stolen or totaled early in the lease, that upfront money may not protect you the way you imagine. In many cases, it is better to keep cash in your own emergency fund than to prepay for the feeling of a prettier monthly number. This is one of those moments where what looks responsible can quietly reduce your resilience. And that word resilience matters. Your car decision should not just answer, "Can I pay this?" It should answer, "Can my life absorb this if something changes?" If the answer is no, the deal is too tight, even if the payment technically fits. A payment that leaves no room for tires, insurance increases, medical costs, home repairs, or family needs is not affordable. It is just approved. And approved is not the same as wise. Now we need to talk about the number that hides behind almost every car conversation. Interest. Sometimes it is obvious. Sometimes it is disguised. Sometimes it is presented in such a polished way that it almost feels like a favor. But money has a cost. Whether you are financing a purchase or leasing a vehicle, someone is charging you for the use of that money. And if you are over 40, this matters because your dollars have competing jobs now. They are not just paying for today, they are trying to protect tomorrow. When you finance a car, the interest rate is usually right there in front of you. Maybe it is 5.9%. Maybe it is 7.2%. Maybe it is higher if your credit has been bruised by life. You can see the loan term, the payment, and the total interest if you bother to ask for it. But in a lease, the financing cost is often hidden inside something called a money factor. It sounds harmless, almost technical enough to ignore. But it is still interest. It is still the price of using someone else's money. And when a financial term is made harder to understand than it needs to be, I always slow down. Not because everyone is dishonest, but because confusion usually benefits the person selling the contract. Here is the kitchen table version. With a purchase, you are borrowing money to buy an asset that declines in value. With a lease, you are paying for the vehicle's depreciation plus the financing cost on the vehicle's value during the lease. Either way, financing matters. A lease with a poor money factor can look attractive because the payment is lower than a purchase, while still being expensive relative to what you are actually getting. A loan with a long term can look manageable because the payment is stretched out, while quietly making the car cost far more than the price you thought you negotiated. This is why dealerships often focus your attention on the monthly payment. Payment is emotional. Total cost is adult. Payment asks, can you survive this month? Total cost asks, will this decision still look sane 5 years from now? Those are different questions. And at this stage of life, you cannot afford to only answer the first one. You have too much life behind you, and too much life still ahead to let every major decision be reduced to a monthly amount. Let's imagine a person buying a $42,000 vehicle. They stretch the loan to 84 months because the shorter loan makes the payment uncomfortable. On paper, the long loan solves the problem. The payment drops. The deal becomes possible. But what really happened? They did not make the car cheaper. They made the obligation longer. They pushed the discomfort into the future and paid interest for the privilege. Now, 3 years later, they want to trade the car because their needs changed. But the loan balance is still high, the vehicle has depreciated, and suddenly they are upside down. The old debt gets rolled into the next car. The next payment gets heavier. And without meaning to, they have built a staircase where every step goes down. This is one of the most dangerous patterns in American car buying, treating negative equity like it is just a detail. It is not a detail. It is yesterday's decision asking to be fed by tomorrow's income. Rolling old debt into a new vehicle can feel like a clean reset because the old problem disappears from sight. But it does not disappear. It moves into the new loan and puts on a fresh shirt. Now you are not just paying for the car you drive. You are paying for the car you no longer have. Leasing can create a different version of the same cycle. You may not have negative equity in the same way, but you can become dependent on always having a new contract. The lease ends, and if you do not have cash ready or a purchase plan, you need another car. So you lease again, and again. Each time the payment feels normal because there has always been a payment. That is how a temporary convenience becomes a permanent fixture. It is like a guest who stays so long you stop noticing they live in your house. Now, there are times when a lease can make sense. If you use a vehicle for business and your tax situation truly supports it, if you drive predictable miles, if you value new car reliability, if you have strong retirement savings and no high-interest debt, then leasing may be reasonable. But notice how specific that is. Leasing works best when it is chosen from strength, not from payment pressure. It is different to say, I lease because it fits my strategy, than to say, I lease because it is the only way I can afford this car. One is a decision. The other is a warning light. The same is true with buying. Buying works best when the vehicle is modest enough, the loan is short enough, the down payment is healthy enough, and the plan is to keep the car long enough. Buying becomes dangerous when it is used to justify a purchase that is too large. A person says, at least I'm not throwing money away on a lease, but then signs up for 7 years of payments on a vehicle that will be worth much less before the loan is done. That is not automatically wiser. That is just a different kind of expensive. Here's a simple mental exercise. Before you focus on the car, focus on the money. Take the proposed monthly payment and ask, what else could this same dollar be doing? If you are 45, could part of it be catching up retirement contributions? If you are 55, Could it be reducing credit card debt before retirement? If you are 62, could it be lowering the amount you will need to withdraw from investments later? If you are helping adult children, caring for parents, or still paying a mortgage, could a smaller vehicle decision give your household more oxygen? This is not about guilt. It is about hierarchy. Every dollar has a job, and some jobs matter more than leather seats. A car is important. Reliable transportation matters. Safety matters. But the car should not outrank your emergency fund, your retirement stability, your debt reduction, or your ability to sleep at night. When it does, the vehicle stops being transportation and becomes a beautifully detailed financial anchor. One practical rule is this: never let the dealership define affordability for you. The lender's approval is not a blessing, it is a business decision. They are asking, can we reasonably collect this money from you? You need to ask, will my life still feel stable after I agree to pay it? A bank may approve a payment that leaves you thin. A salesperson may celebrate a deal that makes your budget brittle. Only you can protect the space between what is possible and what is wise. There is a moment in almost every car deal when the decision stops being about transportation and starts being about identity. Nobody says it out loud. The salesperson does not lean across the desk and say, "So, what are you trying to prove with this vehicle?" But the question is there. It sits under the leather seats. It sits under the badge on the grill. It sits under the feeling of pulling into the driveway and thinking, this looks like where I should be by now. And for people over 40, that feeling can be powerful, because by this age, a car is rarely just a car. It can become a quiet report card, a reward, a signal that the struggle meant something, a way of saying, I made it through. There is nothing wrong with wanting dignity. There is nothing wrong with wanting comfort. There is nothing wrong with driving something that does not make you feel tired before the day even begins. But the financial danger begins when the car is asked to heal something the numbers cannot afford. This is where leasing often becomes seductive. It gives access to a higher status vehicle for a lower monthly payment than buying. That is the emotional genius of the lease. It lets a person step into a nicer version of themselves without immediately feeling the full weight of the cost. And sometimes that is perfectly fine. But sometimes the lease is not really about the car. It is about keeping up with a neighborhood. It is about not wanting to look like life has been harder than it has. It is about replacing an older vehicle after a divorce, a career disappointment, a health scare, or a season where you feel time moving faster than you expected. A car can become a mood, and moods are expensive when they sign contracts. Owning has its own emotional trap. Some people buy because they hate the idea of throwing money away on a lease. That phrase sounds wise, but it can hide sloppy math. If you buy too much vehicle, finance it too long, and trade it before the ownership years get valuable, you may not be building wealth at all. You may simply be paying more for the comfort of telling yourself you own something. Ownership only becomes financially powerful when it is paired with restraint and patience. Without those two, ownership can become pride with an interest rate. So the mature question is not, do I lease or do I buy? The mature question is, what kind of person am I when I am making this decision? Am I calm? Am I tired? Am I trying to solve a practical problem? Or am I trying to feel respected? Am I comparing total costs? Or am I comparing myself to someone else at a stoplight? Am I choosing a vehicle that fits my life? Or am I choosing one that fits the story I wish people believed about my life? These are not soft questions. They are financial questions wearing human clothes. Let's bring this down to real life. Imagine you are driving a 10-year-old sedan. It still runs, but it is aging. The seat has a tear. The screen feels outdated. Newer cars pass you with quiet engines and perfect paint. You start thinking, I worked too hard to drive this. That sentence may be true, but it may also be incomplete. A better sentence might be, I worked too hard to put my retirement under pressure for a car that will feel normal in 6 months. Because that is the thing about upgrades. The thrill fades, the payment stays, the new smell disappears, the contract remains, the compliments stop, the automatic withdrawal does not. A useful test is to imagine nobody will ever see the car. No neighbor, no coworker, no family member, no old friend from high school. Nobody at church, the office, the golf course, the the grocery store, or the family reunion. You still need to drive it. You still need it to be safe. You still need it to be comfortable enough for your body and reliable enough for your life. But nobody will admire it. What would you choose then? That answer is often closer to the truth. Another test. Imagine the payment continues for 12 months after the excitement is gone, because it will. Does the decision still feel solid? Does it still belong in your budget? Does it still protect your emergency fund? Does it still allow retirement contributions? Does it still leave room for insurance increases, property taxes, medical costs, and helping family without resentment? If the answer depends on everything going perfectly, the car is too expensive, whether it is leased or owned. The hidden math is not only in depreciation and interest, it is in opportunity cost. Every dollar committed to a car cannot be used somewhere else. That does not mean every dollar must be optimized until life becomes joyless. Nobody wants to live inside a spreadsheet. But after 40, some dollars carry more weight than others. A dollar added to an emergency fund can prevent a credit card balance. A dollar invested for retirement can buy future independence. A dollar used to pay down high-interest debt can stop financial bleeding. A dollar kept in cash can give you courage to say no to a bad job, a bad loan, or a bad deal. A dollar put into an oversized car payment may only buy a smoother ride to a tighter life. So here's the practical idea I want you to hold. Choose the least expensive vehicle that still preserves your dignity, safety, and real needs. Not the cheapest vehicle. Cheapest can become expensive if it breaks, endangers you, or creates constant stress. But the least expensive vehicle that honestly fits. There is a difference. That difference is where wisdom lives. For one person, that might mean leasing a modest vehicle because predictable reliability matters and the budget is strong. For another, it might mean buying a certified used car and keeping it 8 years. For another, it might mean repairing the current car for 1 more year while rebuilding savings. The right answer is the one that protects the whole life, not just the driveway. Before signing, ask yourself one private question. Will this vehicle make my life stronger or just make my image quieter? Sit with that. Do not rush past it, because a car can absolutely make life stronger. Reliable transportation can protect your job, your health, your independence, your ability to care for people. But an image purchase only quiets insecurity for a short season. Then the insecurity comes back, and now it has a payment attached. Sometimes the wisest car in the parking lot is simply the one that lets you drive home without having to lie to yourself. If you are still here with me near the end of this video, I want to invite you to subscribe to our channel and follow along with us every day. Not because we are chasing noise, but because these are the kinds of conversations most people should have had years ago. Before the contracts, before the debt, before the quiet pressure became normal. And if you are over 40, you already know this. Nobody is coming to organize your financial life for you. At some point, you decide to pay closer attention, not out of fear, out of respect for the life you are still building. Now let's come back to the car, because there is one final layer that brings everything together. The best choice is not always the one with the best math on paper. It is the one you can actually live with without creating a new weakness somewhere else. A perfect spreadsheet can still produce a bad decision if it ignores your temperament. Some people should not lease because they will always exceed the mileage, worry about every scratch, and feel trapped by the contract. Some people should not buy an older car because every repair will make them anxious, even if the math works. Some people say they will keep a car for 10 years, but they know themselves well enough to admit they start looking for something new after year 4. And that self-knowledge matters. Financial wisdom is not pretending you are a different person. It is designing decisions around the person you actually are, while gently becoming more disciplined over time. So before you decide, you need to know your pattern, not your opinion. Your pattern. Opinions are cheap. Patterns are evidence. Look back at your last 3 vehicles. Did you keep them as long as you said you would? Did you trade early? Did you roll debt forward? Did you underestimate repairs? Did you buy more car when income went up? Did you choose based on payment and regret the total cost later? Did you tell yourself, this time is different, while doing almost the same thing again? That little review may teach you more than any online calculator, because the calculator does not know how you behave when you are tired, proud, pressured, or sitting across from a salesperson who knows how to make a deal feel urgent. There is a practical way to slow the whole thing down. Decide your car rules before you need a car. Not at the dealership, not when your current vehicle is making a strange noise, not when you just got a promotion, not after your neighbor bought something beautiful. Decide when you are calm. For example, you might say, I will not take a car loan longer than 5 years, or I will not lease unless the payment fits easily and I have no high-interest debt, or I will not put a large down payment on a lease just to make the payment look smaller, or I will not buy a vehicle if it keeps me from contributing to retirement. These are not commandments, they are guardrails, and guardrails are most useful when the road gets emotional. One of the strongest guardrails is the overnight rule. Never sign the same day you test drive unless you have already done the full math before walking in. A test drive is not neutral. The smell, the screen, the quiet cabin, the way the steering wheel feels in your hands, the idea of leaving your old car behind, all of that changes your brain. You start imagining the new life before you have examined the new obligation. That is not weakness. That is human. So you build a pause into the process. You take the numbers home. You look at insurance. You check taxes and fees. You compare the lease total with the buy total. You ask what happens after 3 years, after 5 years, after 7 years. You let the excitement cool enough for truth to speak. And bring insurance into the decision early. Many people compare the lease payment to the loan payment and forget that insurance can change the real cost dramatically. A newer car, a luxury model, a leased vehicle with certain coverage requirements, a teenage driver in the household, a zip code with higher rates, these things matter. A car that looks affordable before insurance may become tight after insurance. The practical move is simple. Before you agree to the car, call your insurer or run a quote with the exact vehicle. Not a similar one, the exact one. Because the car you love at $490 a month may become a very different decision when insurance adds another $160 or $220. Also, think about cash. Cash is not just money sitting around. Cash is emotional stability. If buying requires draining your emergency fund, the car may be too expensive. If leasing requires several $1,000s up front and leaves you thin, the lease may be too fragile. After 40, cash reserves matter more than appearances. Life has enough surprises without volunteering to be unprepared. A paid-off car with a healthy emergency fund may feel less glamorous than a new lease, but it may let you sleep better. And sleep is not a small financial category. People make worse decisions when they are financially tense all the time. Now, one question people often ask is, should I buy at the end of a lease? The answer depends on the numbers and the condition of the car. Sometimes the buyout price is attractive, especially if the vehicle's market value is higher than the residual value in the contract. Sometimes buying your leased car makes sense because you know its history, mileage, maintenance, and habits. But sometimes the buyout is too high, or financing the buyout creates another long obligation on a vehicle that is no longer new. The key is not emotion, it is comparison. What would it cost to buy this car versus a similar used car, versus leasing again, versus buying something more modest? Do not buy the car just because you are attached to it. Attachment is not equity. The same goes for trading a car you own. If the car is paid off and reliable, do not underestimate what you have. A paid-off car is not an old failure sitting in the driveway. It may be one of the few things in your life that is not asking for money every month. Sometimes people trade because they are bored, not because the car is failing. And boredom can be very expensive when financed. If your current car is safe, reliable, and fits your life, one more year without a payment can do real work. It can rebuild savings. It can kill a credit card balance. It can fund retirement. It can create the down payment that keeps your next decision from being desperate. So the hidden math finally becomes personal. Leasing asks, how much am I willing to pay for predictability, newness, and convenience? Owning asks, how much uncertainty am I willing to manage in exchange for long-term control and possible payment-free years? Neither answer makes you smarter by itself. What makes you smarter is seeing the full trade. No fantasy. No sales language. No pretending the lower payment is automatically better. No pretending ownership is automatically noble. Just the truth of your income, your savings, your age, your responsibilities, your driving, your patience, your tolerance for repairs, and your need for flexibility. And maybe that is the real decision, not lease versus own, flexible versus fragile. Because a fragile life can be pushed over by one repair, one layoff, one medical bill, one insurance increase, one adult child in trouble, one bad month. A flexible life bends. It has room. It can absorb a surprise without turning it into a crisis. Your car should not steal that room. It should help preserve it. And when you understand that, the dealership feels different. The shiny hood still shines. The numbers still matter. But you are no longer asking the car to tell you who you are. You are asking whether it fits the life you are trying to protect. By now, the question probably feels different than it did at the beginning. At first, leasing versus owning sounds like a debate about cars. New versus used, payment versus payment, warranty versus repairs. But underneath all of that, it is really a debate about time, your future income, your tolerance for uncertainty, your desire for peace, your need to be seen, your responsibility to the person you are becoming 10 years from now. A lease can be right when it is chosen clearly, from a position of strength, with predictable miles, stable finances, and a real understanding that you are paying for convenience, not building ownership. Buying can be right when the car is modest, the loan is not stretched too thin, and you are willing to keep it long enough for the quiet years to matter. But either choice can become wrong when it is used to hide from the truth. The truth that the payment is too tight. The truth that the image matters more than you want to admit. The truth that you are tired, and tired people are easy to sell to. The hidden math is not hidden because it is impossible to understand. It is hidden because most of us are trained to look away from the parts that make us uncomfortable. The total cost, the interest, the depreciation, the end of the lease, the repair fund, the insurance, the cash we are giving up, the retirement contribution we postpone, the emergency fund we drain, the old debt we roll forward, the future month we already promised to someone else. None of these pieces screams, they whisper. And financial pressure is often built from whispers. So before your next car decision, do one thing differently. Do not start with the car. Start with the life. Start with the mortgage or rent. Start with the emergency fund. Start with the credit card balance. Start with the retirement account. Start with the people who depend on you. Start with the number of years you want to keep working because you choose to, not because every payment requires it. Then let the car enter that picture like a guest who needs permission to stay. If it fits, fine. If it crowds everything else, be honest enough to see it. Maybe the wisest sentence you can say at a dealership is not clever or aggressive. Maybe it is just this: I need to see what this does to the rest of my life. That one sentence changes the room. It puts the car back in its place. It reminds you that transportation is important, but it is not the whole story. It reminds you that a smooth ride is not worth a brittle household. It reminds you that being approved is not the same as being protected. Because in the end, the best car decision is not the one that impresses your neighbor, lowers the payment by $20, or makes you feel successful for the first week. It is the one that lets you drive home with your future still intact. It is the one that leaves room for a bad month. It is the one that does not require you to pretend. It is the one that serves your life quietly without becoming the loudest bill in it. If this conversation gave you something to think about, follow the channel and share this video with 5 people who might be standing in front of a decision like this and only looking at the monthly payment. Leave a sincere comment below. Tell me where you are in this decision right now, or what topic you want us to talk about next. Because money is not just numbers, it is the shape of our choices. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is pause before you sign and listen to the life behind the math.